For the People is a great new book and video series by Doc Reiser. Your rights are undeniable. Your voice indisputable.
I'm Robert Reiser, and I want to introduce you to a series that we're doing. It's on the Constitution and the rights within the Constitution that are guaranteed. You know, we did the Bill of Rights, but the Bill of Rights limits you to just those rights. So we're going to explore rights that have not necessarily been translated into law, but we will cover all the civil rights and the rights that we passed as the amendments, and then maybe a couple of amendments that we should pass. But in this, you're going to understand, hopefully, the rights that our forefathers gave us in the Constitution, all of our rights, and the rights that we should always protect, and including, as the forefathers, there were 31 of them, they never could agree on anything. They disagreed. I've read all their statements. I've read private letters. The thing is that they decided on one thing, and that is the individual. The needs of the individual can never fall prey to the needs of the many. And that's what you have to understand. The needs of the individual is more important than the needs of the many for a lot of different reasons. Many individuals, you can't go down the line and say this individual right is kept, this individual, because it's we, the people. And in the series, We the People, you're going to understand, I hope, the rights that are easy to see in the Constitution and some that are so easy to see. And there's more rights there than the Bill of Rights gave us. They limited us to just those rights, and I think that was Franklin's argument against the Bill of Rights. There was a lot of argument. A lot of people didn't like the idea of the Bill of Rights, but Hamilton, some other people thought that people were too slow and they wouldn't understand, so let's explain to them these rights. And so there again, this isn't going to be a history lesson. That's for you to take somewhere else. But I am going to, in this series, I am going to examine every civil liberty, every right that our forefathers wanted to not be changed. And that's why they gave us the Supreme Court. Congress can get dumb and pass a law, and we have a dumb president and he can pass a law, and then all those things can get somewhere up until the time they challenge it on the district appeals level or the Supreme Court level. And the Supreme Court's only job is to make sure that the rights guaranteed us by our forefathers as they saw them are unchanged by any law that we may pass. The Constitution is about rights. It's not law, it's about rights. It's about protecting our rights, and it's an instrument. They set up the executive branch, the congressional, congressmen can represent you locally, and they have a district judge that goes in that district too. But the congressman is voted on by the people, and hopefully he carries their views. I think they've gotten a little far away from that, but it was a good plan. And we're going to examine all that. Anyway, I hope you enjoy our series, and put your hats on. This is going to be fun. I'll see you later.
For the People is a great new book and video series by Doc Reiser. It is everything you need to know about the Constitution, and then some. Your rights are undeniable. Your voice indisputable. We are the individual people of the United States of America.
I would like to take a minute, maybe, to, if you don't mind, to explain rights. Rights. Civil rights, individual rights, the rights of the individual. Basically, in the Constitution, the individual can do anything he wants to do, up until it affects another individual. In other words, all your rights end at my nose. All my rights end at your nose. So we can, of course, in order to do anything you can think of, there's some things that you shouldn't do. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So there's lots of rights that we've kind of agreed on as on a state level, which are based on community prejudices. This community on the West Coast may let you have a nude beach. If you do so on the East Coast, they'll arrest you. So a lot of rights are, let's say, common to an area, or common to the people that they're affecting. Every state, we have 50 states and now 48 continuous in Alaska and Hawaii. We have 50 states, and each of those states are different, and they have different criteria. So they're going to be different laws. But I mean, the main thing is, a robbery, rape, murder, all those things. They're going to be similar, but some states have the death penalty, some life in prison. Those states are allowed under the United States to do whatever they want. The idea of the federal government was really simple. It allowed each of the states to be independent. So it was an instrument used to create a federal government. But the federal government was never intended to be a central government or a government in control of anything. What it was basically to confederate the states. So each state was able to keep their own local laws, their own local feelings, and you have to understand the laws are prejudicial. There's no such thing as a non-prejudicial law. But the reality is, on the West Coast, you can take your top off if you're a woman, but maybe if you take your shorts off and you're a man, it's illegal. See that all laws are prejudicial. I know that's an extreme example, but they are. And so they're common to a common area, and they're common to each state. And the idea of the federal government is a confederation of all these states together. And their main job is to make sure you don't violate the civil rights or the individual rights that were expressed in the Constitution. That's all the Constitution is about. It's your rights. Our forefathers agreed on these are our rights. And so you have to understand what a right is. It's anything you want to do. But it ends at somebody else's nose. So, and I'm not, of course, criminals are criminals, and we're not even going to discuss too much on that. But the point is that you have the right to do in this country anything you want to do up until the point it affects someone else. And if that effect is pleasant to someone else, that right is extended. If that pleasant is unpleasant to someone, then it's curtailed. But those are the laws that are written around the rights of the Constitution, guaranteed by the Constitution for the people. And that's what this series is all about. And think about your rights as an individual. What right do you have? Do you have the right to comb your hair a certain way? Do you have the right to work at a certain job? Do you have a right to pick a certain mate? Do you have a right to raise your children the way you want to? And that's one area we're going to get into, is children's rights, because they're guaranteed in that Constitution, and no one's ever put it into writing. Matter of fact, I might write an amendment. Anyway, no, seriously, it would be a good idea. Children's rights should be protected. They're in the Constitution. Everything is in there. Our rights, let's don't change them. All right. It's your right to make money. It's your right to make money as long as you're making money in a way that doesn't hurt someone else or deprive them of their rights. And that gets back to who's writing the laws, and all laws are prejudicial. Believe me, there's no such thing as a non-prejudicial law. So, I mean, whatever you're prejudiced against as a community, you're going to pass the law against it. But therein is the difficulty of private ownership, and we're going to explore all these things. And I think that we're going to have a lot of interesting comments. But in all this series and in all these things, what my real goal is for you to understand the rights given to us by our forefathers, for you to explore the rights that they gave you that they didn't even know existed. They gave you rights that they couldn't see. They had no idea of what you would be needing 200 years later. but they gave you those rights. So let's explore the rights that our forefathers guaranteed us, that we fought a Revolutionary War for, that we fought even a Civil War for, and we have to start honoring this Constitution. The needs of the many can never outweigh the needs of the individual, and the state cannot seize your property. Those two ideals were nailed down in our forefathers' minds and should never, never be forgotten or abused in any way. And of course, we have a history of abusing both. The 1983 Civil Rights Act in 1965, and they tried to hit on rights in a way that no one had ever done. And I think that was very important to realize that you cannot use color of law to deprive someone of their civil rights. Now, what does that mean, color of law? That means if I'm a sheriff somewhere and I'm depriving you of your civil rights, I'm not letting you cross this bridge, Martin Luther King, then you are being deprived of your civil rights under color of law. This is very clearly important to all of us to understand color of law. Law cannot deprive you of your civil rights, and thank God for the Civil Rights Act. And it's way more than black and white. The Civil Rights Act is the father of our real rights, and it's gonna grow. They're gonna throw it out. You gotta go back and throw out the Civil Rights Act? Nah. It's going to grow. There's a lot more rights in there than anybody imagined. And color of law, official government policy cannot deprive you of your civil rights. So do not be afraid. And even though color of law is being used politically heavily by a party right now against another party, I'm sure it's been used by the other party against them at some time. But we can't get into all that. We have to just vote all those people out of office. You just forget them on both sides. I don't care if it's Republican, I don't care if it's Democrat. Just vote them out of office. If they're not talking your rights all the time, your rights. They don't need to be in Congress. They don't need to be in Senate. They don't need to be your president. They don't need to be your governor. They don't need to be your mayor. Let's talk about rights only. And the curtailment of those rights through laws that the community passes. And let's be sure, if a law does more harm than good, but the people who passed it can't see the harm or won't acknowledge harm, it's a bad law. If a law is weak, but it does good in certain areas, then strengthen that law. If a law is overbearing or uses the color of law, the color of authority, to deprive you of a civil right, it's time we examine that on every level. On every level. We have branches of the government that weren't even put together correctly that are probably illegal. The FBI, for one. I'm not picking on the FBI. I've got good friends that are FBI agents. Those are good people as a rule. But it's degenerated now into they investigate each other. And they're not the law enforcement agency. They put Capone in jail. So we have to examine that. It would be nice to disband the illegal agencies, the DEA, the FBI. If you want those type of agencies, let Congress form them properly. They know how. And if they can't form them properly, we got a Supreme Court. They'll slap them in. You can't do that. And that's good. But if we try, we can do it. Let's don't sit on our bunnies and think that we've accomplished anything. We hadn't even been able to follow the original Constitution yet. We've tried. You gotta remember that from Delano Roosevelt, all his cabinet members were card-carrying communists, American Communist Party. That was his whole 11 cabinet members were Communist Party members. So we tried communism for a while. We tried before Russia did. But communism as an economic system failed. And we voted out of office, I think, extremely well, because by 1955, and President Eisenhower after the war, he was our last representative of that thought group. and God bless him. And then there's no more Acme. There's Ford Motor Company. There's no more Acme. There's General Electric. So independent corporations running independent business, which are guaranteed rights under our Constitution. Because the Constitution was to protect our economy. Our economic rights are just as important as our individual rights anywhere else. And so economically, we were stomping on the rights, and we voted out of office. Now, socialism is a different deal. See, communism is an economic system, and you can vote it in or out. Socialism is a political system. You're not going to be able to vote those guys out, and they're going to seize power. And power in a socialistic system always goes to a few, and the few have everything in the world, and the many have nothing. And it's all done under the guise of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the individual. That's a lie. Don't follow that lie. We're all individuals. How could the needs of the individual be stomped on? How could the needs of anybody outweigh your personal needs? Do you want to give up any of your personal rights? Think about it. Your personal needs, your personal rights, aren't they more important than what anybody else think about? And I think a clear definition of children's rights ought to be expanded upon too. Anyway, that's our series. We're going to touch economics, political. We're going to touch the different ways that the Constitution has been dumped on and ignored. It has no duty other than to make sure that the rights guaranteed in the Constitution by our forefathers are never infringed upon. No law is written that will take away those rights that are guaranteed in that Constitution. By definition, the Supreme Court is a very conservative court. It has to be. Under the Constitution, it's supposed to be. They're not supposed to have any new ideas at all. They're not progressive. They're to protect the rights guaranteed to us in the Constitution by our forefathers. That is the Supreme Court's job. And I think that if we think about it, we'll quit trying to put progressives on the Supreme Court, because that's unconstitutional. Think about it, it's unconstitutional to have anybody that wants to change the Constitution as a Supreme Court judge. They're, by definition, their job is to protect the ideals of the Constitution, make sure there are no changes. So you want to put progressive on the Supreme Court, somebody that has ideas of changing the Constitution? That's unconstitutional. Think about it. It's unconstitutional. Our lawyers have to think about constitutional rights, what they are. And there's a lot more rights than anybody. The Bill of Rights limited you just to those rights, but there's more rights in there. There's lots more rights. And that's what we're going to explore in this series. So that you already know my main beefs. I want to protect the individual freedoms granted us in the Constitution by our forefathers, and I want to protect property, personal property. That for the first time, we tried to give people personal property that the state couldn't seize, the Pharaoh couldn't seize, the emperor couldn't seize, the king couldn't seize. Personal property. And it has to be explored, because even though the property tax is unconstitutional, and I guarantee you it is, but there's always a right-of-way problem. And you have to understand that now you have a problem, because what is best for the whole stream of commerce is maybe to use this property to build a bridge on. So they want to have right-of-way over your property. And you don't want to sell that property for any reason. Well, there you have your first conflict of property. There shouldn't be property taxes. This is a real conflict. I've got personal property, and it would be better if I would let this personal property, a bridge be put on, a highway, something, and I don't want it. Now you have a real problem, and that has to be worked out. Right of way is a scary subject to me. Now that takes a good lawyer. And I have lots of good lawyers who have opinions on that, and you'll see them in the series. You'll see them and you'll recognize them. I'll have opinions on them. But basically, that is the biggest trick. But property taxes are clearly unconstitutional. I can't say it enough. It's against the will of our forefathers. A tax lien, a tax seizure by the state or county, yeah. Now, if you owe the bank money and you hadn't paid them, they can put a lien on you. That's legal commerce. The Constitution is all about legal commerce. It's about economy. You do anything to interfere with the economy, you're interfering with the rights of people to make money. You remember that. It's all about business. Because business pays for life. Life doesn't pay for nothing. But if you do your business right, you can pay for your life.
The world is a business, Mr. Beale.
You can ask Doc a question or debate live on video with him. Well then, come on with it. All emails will be answered. Doc will explore individual issues, and he encourage open dialogues with everyone. If there is something you don't understand, let's talk about it.